We are back once again with Ethan Forman of the Gloucester Times to talk big picture stuff for Gloucester and Cape Ann. How you doing, Ethan?
Hanging in there, hanging in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm home, but working from home this week, and then hope to be back in the office next week. A little bout with the COVID.
The big C,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
I'm feeling fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, we're just telling folks that you're away on assignment for us when you're at a different location.
yeah, I'm in another coastal community on
Yeah.
the but I am looking forward to coming. I did I did have an assignment earlier this week. It was nice to go out into the beautiful Gloucester, so beautiful. So
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But you were outdoors. Let's just put it that way.
it was good.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. All right. Well, first things first, the holiday weekend is upon us, and people who want to park can no longer do that for free.
Well, yeah, I guess. Well, parking is all, I guess, an issue with in Gloucester. Now, remember, there's that if you don't live in town, is a new beach parking reservation system. Let's remind folks that that's happening. The Yodel app.
All those out of town people who watch our show.
Yes,
You'd be surprised, Heather.
and I'm going to tell you, it's in my Facebook feed, so there's people watching it. But and also remind folks, if they do live in town, it's a bargain to get a beach parking sticker. Don't not get that. But one of the things that's happened, the parking kiosks are going to finally come online on Friday, just in time for Memorial Day weekend. It was a promise made by Mayor Verga to have this happen, and I guess he's living up to it. We'll see. They've had problems with these kiosks. I guess now this predates me, but they had kiosks that printed out. My understanding, they printed out a parking pass.
Yes, right. And you would stick that in your windshield.
And you stick it in your windshield. I'll tell you something. As somebody who's ancient and old, I like that system because it's like I got something on my windshield and it shows I'm parking. So now the newfangled parking kiosks, you have to go and you have to know what your license plate number is. You punch it in, and then you buy the time. I don't know how they know that you're legally parked there, and perhaps that was the issue.
You don't need to know, Ethan. Just know.
No,
how do the
police? It's still a mystery to me, even writing about this story. But I think the enforcement piece was something that was sort of hanging them up. Last year, the new parking kiosk came. There was no module to accept coins.
Right.
It was credit card and then the Flowbird app. You have to get the Flowbird app on your phone, which I'm going to download. I'm going to download right after this podcast.
Yeah, we should actually do one of these just showing people how to download that app.
It's easy. You go to the app store and you download it, put your credit card in, and then you never have to think about it again. You just go on and do it. I have a lot of parking apps on my phone, and it's the way to go, but they didn't accept coins. So they had to have a module that would accept coins. We had supply chain issues. This was all last year.
So now it takes coins, credit cards, and the Flowbird. You can do it just all on your phone.
So they install the modules, but I think what was happening was, I think a couple things, as far as I can divine, even writing about this for the third time. Well, they had the coins all set, but the kiosks weren't working. It would come and say out of order. So the mayor was saying to me, people may not have confidence in a system where you have to walk from kiosk to kiosk to kiosk to park. I mean, theoretically, you don't have to go to the kiosk nearest you to buy the parking. Go to any kiosk. If it's out of order, you go down the street. You have to keep going down the street. It doesn't build confidence in the system. And also,
I'm irritated already.
Yeah, don't be irritated. They're all working. They're mostly all working. The other thing they were talking about is the enforcement piece. How do you enforce it? You have to, you pay the money. And I think, I'm not sure. I think the police are using plate readers so they can, spot, and then they have to get the data to see if you're there. You have to figure out if the person who's parked there, if that data lines up with what they're getting. It's going to be real, pretty much going to be real time. The other thing that they had to do, we didn't really talk about it in this story that I wrote, but we did touch on it last story. They had to go in and rewrite or look at the ordinances to make sure that they match up. You can't find somebody if it's referring to a coin operated meter. So they had there was a lot of background stuff. The enforcement piece turned out to be a lot more tricky than they thought, but now it's up.
Right.
So Ethan, I think you mentioned in your article how much revenue was lost with these meters being gone for over a year, right?
Well, they haven't been operating since that I know of, since I've been in town, since I've been in Gloucester since February. And I noticed it when I went to City Hall and tried to pay for parking, and all the kiosks were out on the street on Dale Avenue.
So maybe it was last fall there were, but
Last fall there was,
Yeah.
they had lost significant revenue. You got to remember that the year before it was COVID,
Right.
so they lost a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
So, but I think the city also makes parking revenue in other ways. I think I think the beach stickers are probably the beach passes.
Yeah.
How much revenue? I mean, I think
And-
one of the let's talk about it this way. Everyone wants to talk about how much money did the city lose. It's not a revenue generator. It's to keep people from parking 8 hours in a spot downtown.
Yeah.
So the merchants can't get any business. You drive down Main Street and you want to park, and you're gonna just drive by that store. So that's really what the intent of this is. 2 hours and move your car.
Yeah, and it's always been tough because you have residents living above a lot of those businesses down there, or a lot of salons where people are in there for more than a couple of hours and have to keep going out and feeding the meter. But
Yeah.
anyway, it'll be interesting to see, Ethan, with the metrics at the end of the year when they figure out what the sort of traffic flow and revenue that were made off of these new kiosks.
Yeah, I think I'm imagining, because it's on app, the data will be much better than a coin meter
Yeah.
as far as tracking.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm gonna download the Flowbird app. I'm hoping to come to Gloucester tomorrow for something. I'm not sure, but if I do, I'll test it out, and I'll let you guys know.
I need a straight answer on what days you have to pay for parking in the city of Gloucester.
Well, it's
We asked
every
the
day.
mayor this.
Yeah, it's every day, but Sunday, and I think
Sundays
it's
and
from
holidays.
9 to 6 p.m. every day,
Okay, great.
except
Thank
Sunday.
you, Kory.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe. So there
And
is that.
holidays. So Monday will be
Right.
free parking, right?
Yeah, this Monday. Yeah, should be. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So, Ethan, we're glad you got out into the great outdoors recently. You want to tell us about your trip to the Clam Flats?
Yeah, I got to hang out with Pete Seminara,
Mhm.
the Shellfish Constable, actually law enforcement officer, and the assistant, the deputy Shellfish Constable, Rebecca Visnick, on a project. This is the first clam propagation project, shellfish propagation project in the city in about 10 years. The shellfish department won a grant. I think it's an MITC grant, and the Woods Hole Sea grant, and some other organizations or programs it was a COVID relief program, because the shellfish industry suffered during the pandemic. So what they came up with this idea to reseed a clam flat called Jim Durney's, which is off Crafts Road. I'd never been down there, so it was kind of cool. It's like you drive off the highway and you're like, whoa. I'm also interested to find out where that outlet is to get to Craft. I think there's other ways to get there besides 128. So it's a really cool, I think, off Concord Street. It's a really cool place. This is a really cool area. We go out, there's no parking. We had to park in the wood, off the side of the road. We go out into the salt marsh, walk on the salt marsh, and they had spread these nets out on the muck. And the idea is that they didn't put juvenile clams down, that the tide brings them in, and then see if they can capture them and reseed the bed. And if this can become a productive bed, it will help the local clammers. They tell me there's about 95 commercial permits they issue every year, and there's only about 20 to 30 dedicated clammers. And get this, I didn't realize to get a commercial license, you have to be a resident of Gloucester. You cannot do commercial clamming in Gloucester if you're not a resident. You can get an out of town permit to do like recreation, do it recreationally. They also sell permits for 1 day for residents, but you have to be a resident. And it's really interesting. I we'll see what happens.
Ethan, why was COVID hard on the shellfish industry?
I think there's just I'm not sure. I think people weren't going out. It's hard to enforce. The Shellfish Constable was telling me that they do. It's to be a shellfish constable is a 7-day job because people will go digging for clams without a permit, and the residents call them up and say, "There's somebody digging outside. They shouldn't be there." And the very interesting thing is, if a clam flat is closed because of red tide or because of pollution, and someone's digging clams, you have to monitor that. It's not at first I was like, oh, the city's got a shellfish constable. What do they do? It's like they're protecting people's health, because if they're digging clams out of a closed flat because of pollution, they could get seriously ill. So I think it was just this. I think fishing industries, shellfish industries were hit, whether people were able to go out, but this idea is that propagate Jim Journey's flat used to be productive. It's not anymore. Try to figure out what's going on, create it could have an impact on the local economy. It'll be another place for the clammers to dig.
Yeah, and I think the state released a study, Heather, saying that essentially for the fisheries during COVID, the numbers fell dramatically because of restrictions and closures. Those were 1 and 2. So,
yeah, I mean, I think in the fishing boats, could you get monitors on the boats because of close proximity? I mean, all the different factors. But
even the closures, they closed the clam flats during COVID. Is that just because they couldn't? I don't know. Why would that be?
It's usually when they are closed. It's usually because of health concern, like a red tide, not dealing with the severity that the fishing industry is.
Okay, so it just happened to be that there were also sort of marine issues with like red tide or something. Oh, I see. Okay, it coincided with COVID.
Yeah,
and if you recall, like everything was kind of shut down. People weren't doing anything. I mean, people weren't going. You know what I mean? So it's like that has an impact if you're not going out clamming. You're not making money.
Well, and also the restaurants were all closed. So as options to sell the clams, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Demand was probably down.
Yeah, right. So when will these clams be in our restaurants, do you think? How long does it take for a clam?
It'll be a few years. They have to be 2 inches long, and the idea is that they propagate, then they grow, and maybe like a year or two. If you have a commercial clam license, you can pretty much dig every day if the flat isn't closed. It's a year-round permit. If there's no red tide, you can go out, and I think it's like 250 pounds per tide. I mean, it's a lot. But the shellfish constables were telling me, these guys, they need to preserve their resource, because if you dig out the flat, there's nothing there.
Gotcha. Well, we also want to give a tip of the cap to Times photographer Paul Bilodeau, who has great drone photos of the clam flats too. So check that out in the Times as well. Ethan, we want to finish up with, there's a special city council meeting on budget amendments you wanted to address.
Yeah, this kind of caught me off guard. I watched the city council meeting the other night. I got a message by Val Gilman, council president, saying we're having a special meeting today at 3:30 for an hour to go over Senate budget amendments that are being debated now in the new fiscal 2023 budget. So there's just some amendments, regional school transportation reimbursements, remote meeting extension, which was a big topic at the last meeting, talking about how they're going to continue with their meeting, because and I think July 15th the state says you can't keep people out of the meeting, because right now it's remote participation. So when they did their hybrid meeting, they all met around the table, but nobody was in the room. I don't know what they gained, except that they were able to be together. There are budgets on early school aid, early voting reimbursements, increases to Chapter 70, the school funding.
So
there's a local opt-in for permanent outdoor dining. All right, so you can have some control about that. Some increased money for the Community Preservation Act, and there was a concern from the Mass Municipal Association. This is also, I think, we're going to talk about an increase in the cost of living adjustment for those for retirees, go up to 5.9%. The thing, if you bump up their cost of living adjustment, even if it's 1 year, it has an impact throughout the system forever. The more you give them once, it adds to their pension, and so it could put a strain on municipal budgets, increasing this cost of living. So there's also a concern from the MMA, and I think the council is going to be discussing that this afternoon. We'll follow up and see what they what they come away with.
Yeah.
So is this unusual, Ethan, that a city council wants to have a special meeting in order to send messages up to Beacon Hill to say, this is how we feel about the amendments you're about to pass? Is that unusual?
No, not at all. And much of my I city councils get communications all the time about what's going on with the legislature, and they say, let's write a letter. Let's make our feelings known. So I think it's probably not a bad idea if the council president has concerns about or recommendations about what is going on in Beacon Hill, to send a message to to our local senators. Who's an extremely responsive person. The local opt-in for permanent dining. So I'm reading from Jeff Beckwith's letter to senators. It says, please support this amendment to give municipalities the option to permanently extend outdoor dining options, filed by Senator Bruce Tarr. Amendment number 332 would allow restaurants to apply for local approval to expand outdoor table service. I never understood why in America we didn't have outdoor service like they do in Europe. I mean, every cafe has outdoor service, and maybe COVID, people realize it's a good thing. So
yeah, we heard like some of the things we had heard from some restaurant owners in the past year or so is it cramped parking, it cramped deliveries. I mean, there are some tight nooks and crannies around here, obviously. But anyway, I mean, I thought it was a win-win, and a lot of restaurant owners actually opted against it this year, surprisingly.
But it's one of the things where I don't understand why people can't just put out a few tables on the sidewalk.
Right.
Why that's not a thing more often. Now there's requirements for people to be able to get, accessibility is important. So let's not minimize that. And a lot of these things are bumped out into the street. Now I have concerns about that because it narrows the street and it takes away parking.
Right.
But there's going to be some, middle ground.
Right. Agreed. Ethan, that was a great job as always. A lot to digest, and we're looking forward to having the conversation with you next week.
Yeah, and I remember to speak with you because I've been forgetting the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll blame that on the COVID.
COVID brain.
All right, take care. Have a safe and fun holiday weekend, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.